The systematic search that wasn't systematic at all, lessons from the Paraquat litigation. In mass tort litigation, the credibility of expert testimony can make or break an entire case. But what happens when that testimony rests on literature reviews with no search strategy, no documentation, and no way to replicate the findings? Well, that's exactly what happened recently in the Paraquat Parkinson lawsuit, and it's why Dr. Martin Wells' testimony was thrown out of federal court. Now, Wells is a biostatistician with Cornell, and he's the plaintiff's only causation expert. Today, I'll walk you through one of the single biggest flaws in Dr. Wells' expert report, the complete absence of a documented, reproducible literature search. Now, there were other issues too, like his inclusion and exclusion criteria. He had cherry-picked studies, and there was no risk of bias analysis at all. But as a medical librarian, I'm going to focus on the foundation of every review, and that is how you find the evidence. Systematic reviews are built on transparency and the ability to replicate your results. Under PRISMA 2020 and Cochrane guidelines, they very clearly spell out how you do this. You predefine your questions, you register your protocols, you document your literature search strategy, and you report how you selected and the process that you used to appraise your studies. This is not just academic, and this is not just a mere formality. In litigation, especially under Daubert, your methods are part of your credibility. And in undocumented literature search, that is an absolute credibility killer, and it was in this case. Dr. Wells' expert report failed to divulge the most basic elements of a defensible literature search. No databases were listed, so he didn't say, hey, I looked in PubMed and Ovid and Web of Science and Scopus, etc. No search terms were shared. We don't know the words and the phrases that he used. We don't know if he did a mesh term search. We don't know if he did a title and abstract search. We don't know any of these strategies that he did or didn't use. He didn't list the publication ranges that he looked back. So we don't know if he looked, only back 10, 20, 30 years, etc. And without a traceable methodology, his report just looks more like advocacy than evidence-based science. And that's exactly one of the major reasons why his testimony was ruled inadmissible under Rule 702, and he was completely tossed. Now, let's look at how the literature search and his documentation of that search should have been done. I'm going to go over 3 different ways of searching documents, the search strategies that were used, and how they documented those and how you could use that in an expert report. I'm going to start with the least best, and I'm going to work up to the better examples at the end. The first example that we're going to look at of how authors documented their search strategy and methods is a systematic review that Wells himself had cited in his expert report. So he was well aware of the choices that they had made. And this SR, it came out in 2016. So they didn't have the most up-to-date Cochrane guidelines. They didn't have PRISMA 2020 back then. They did use PRISMA 2009 version. And so we're going to scan down here to their methods section. And here they just kind of in a narrative way walk you through their choices. So they say, we did a comprehensive search in English only literature. We did 3 separate searches in PubMed. Here's some kind of key concepts that we used. Here's our combined results, 1,145. And if you want a more detailed map of our search strategy, go to our appendix. And I have that pulled up here. And so this just gives you a more detailed look at what they did. We used a Boolean literature search. We searched from June of 2013 on back. And here's our 3 separate searches. So, and here's all our terms. So if you, a total stranger, could just copy and paste this, put it into PubMed, and then of course make sure that you limited this to, their publication date range, you would come up with the same results. My only kind of criticism of this is they should put the number the number of sources that each of these searches returned. So we'll say that this returned 500, and when they ran this one, we'll say it returned 300, and then, whatever number here to get to that 1145 that they had cited earlier. But you can clearly see everything that they did to get that haul of 1145 articles. It's very transparent, and a court can clearly see your methods. The next example is a nursing systematic review on delirium, and their documentation is far from perfect, but it gives you the core of what you need. It says, we looked in 4 databases: PubMed, Embase, Cochrane, Medline. Here are the publication dates that we searched for, and then here are the terms that we used. And so you can clearly see their process. Sure, it didn't show every single line of search syntax that they used, but it offered a very traceable path, and really that's what counts. The third systematic review we're going to look at is one that examined acute kidney injury. And in their search strategy, this is a very short statement, but it has some of the most important things that you need to cite in your expert report about how you found the literature that you found. It says, we looked in PubMed database, so it says which databases they searched in. It says the publication dates that they screened from 1996 to present. This is the date that the search was conducted. And then it says who did the search, a librarian from Hong Kong University. They also were very transparent, honest about, look, we only looked in one database due to time and resource limitation. And then they say, if you want our full search strategy, we have a supplement. And if we check that out, this is very detailed, and this is what you ideally would be able to provide, in some type of appendix in your report. It has all of this information exactly. This is their search strategy that anybody could replicate. So we could copy and paste this, and we could put this in PubMed, and we should get the same results. And you can see all of the terms that they used. And then this gets into their analysis of what they found. But this is a very detailed search strategy. So again, if Wells had followed this roadmap, his report would have been a lot stronger. And the last example we're going to look at is kind of like a bonus, and this is the absolute gold standard. And this is using the Prisma 2020 guidelines. So in this example, we see that they tell us the database that they searched in, Ovid Medline. Here's the dates we searched in from 1946 until the day we sat down at the terminal, August 29, 2013. And then it gives you line by line what the medical librarian or researcher searched for in Ovid Medline. So they started off by typing in urinary bladder overactive. And then my only kind of one little critique I have of this is they should have the number that this returned, like this returned 10,000 sources. That should be there. And then here's the string of terms that they searched for next, and they searched for those in the title and abstract fields. And then they just walk you through exactly what they searched for. All of the terms, there's no guesswork. We have a clear roadmap of their methodology. And then they're looking for, hey, I'm only interested in randomized control trials or controlled clinical trials. And, you can select animal studies or no animal studies. We only searched in English. So a total stranger you've never met can look at this and know exactly what you did, and they can replicate it. And that's very important for an expert's credibility. So Wells' report had no documentation. You could not reproduce his methods. There was no transparency in his methodology. Courts and scientists, they expect better than that. He wasn't excluded because he lacked credentials. He was a tenured professor, a very skilled biostatistician from Cornell. He was excluded because he didn't follow a method consistent with what the scientific community expects from a systematic review. His testimony didn't hold up because his process didn't either. So here's the bottom line. A literature review is only as strong as the methods behind it. If your search cannot be traced, it cannot be repeated or evaluated, it's not going to survive legal scrutiny, and you're really opening yourself up for a Daubert challenge to boot you. In court, your opinion is not enough. You need evidence on your side, and the evidence starts with how you found it. If you're an expert witness or an attorney prepping for a case and you want to absolutely bulletproof your research methods, or you want to pressure test the opposing expert's work, I can help you. I'm Michael Graham from Graham Med Legal, and stay sharp.